Hola.
Hello. Yes, I still don't have a microphone. Let's get right into it. Twilight. Even if you weren't a fan, I'm sure maybe your sister or brother was a fan, maybe your friend from school was a fan, maybe your cousin, or just somebody that you knew was a fan of Twilight. And the frenzy that the franchise created in the fandom was unforgettable, to say the least. I must admit that I was part of the fandom. Not to the extent that I had merch of the movies, but I did skip school so I could go to the movie theater and watch the movie the premiere date because I wanted to be the first one to watch it and I didn't want nobody from school to spoil it for me. Not that my friends were fans, I think I was the only one that liked Twilight, but I wasn't gonna take any chances. I did this with all the movies except the first one because when the first one came out, I didn't know what it was. And yes, you guessed it, I was Team Edward. I was emo as fuck when I was in school. Also, I really wanted a vampire boyfriend after watching Twilight. Like, he was the blueprint. But the one thing that I never did was read the books because I figured I'll just wait until the movies come out and I'm not gonna read the books because why would I do that when the movie is coming out? But when I found out that Stephenie Meyer was going to release Twilight, but from Edward's point of view, girl, was like, okay, I need to read this book. So what I did, I read Twilight and then I read Midnight Sun. And I wanted to share with you which one I liked the most, Bella's POV or Edward's POV. So let's start the mastermind behind this vampire human romance story, Miss Stephenie Meyer. So Stephenie Meyer was born on December 24th, 1973 on Connecticut, United States of America. She started writing the book on June 2nd, 2003. She was 29 years old after she had a dream of a simple girl sitting beside a vampire in a meadow. And they were talking about how they loved each other, but their love was impossible because he's a blood-sucking vampire and she's a human full of blood to be sucked. So that love was impossible. She wrote a story surrounding that dream. So she created the whole story of Twilight in only 3 months. And then it took her 3 more months to edit the story, polish it, and have it accepted for publication. Twilight was finally published on September 27th, 2005. Now, I want to talk about the cover art because obviously when you see the apple, I think everybody knows the reference of Adam and Eve and the forbidden fruit. And obviously that's a reference to that because then inside in the book, she quotes the Bible. So what is the book about? It's a story about a simple, regular girl who lived in Phoenix, Arizona with her mom and her stepdad. And then she decides to move to the state of Washington to live with her dad in a small town called Forks. When she goes to school, she sees this very attractive and sparkly boy who turns out to be a vampire. And of course, like I said before, his love is impossible because she's a human and he's a vampire and he wants to her. The writing style of the book. So in the blog I mentioned before, Stephenie Meyer, she mentions that before writing Twilight, she didn't wrote anything before. And I must say that you can tell in the writing because it has amateur or rookie vibe to it. Hey, I'm not the book police, okay? Nothing wrong with being an amateur. I mean, we all have to start somewhere. And I think the fact that the book is written this way adds a certain charm to it. And I think the fact that the book feels amateur turned out to be in her favor because a lot of the fandom were teenagers. And I don't think that teenagers will be interested in reading books that are very complicated to read. First, we need to talk about the main character of the story, which is Bella. She's the star. So I must say that Bella from the books, it's at least 100 times funnier than Bella from the movie. Right from the start of the book, the author is trying to let you know that Bella is not like other girls. She's simple and brunette. She's very pale and fragile. She's not blonde and tan. And the author mentions this a few times time so you can know that. Another thing that the author makes very clear is that even though that Bella is a teenager, she is very mature. She's like an old soul. Now, my opinion on this, I think that the author made Bella too much of an adult. Like, she doesn't have any teenager qualities. She is very mature. She's like an adult, but give her something that let us know that at the end of the day, she's still a teenager. Like, maybe Bella likes to play Mario Kart, or maybe Bella likes to watch a certain reality TV. Maybe Bella likes a certain boy band. You know, just something that let us know that at the end of the day, she's just a teenager. That detail of Bella not having anything that a teenager would have or would like made me think that Bella might be a self-insert character of the author. Do you know who else said this? Robert Pattinson.
There's a thing about the books where, I mean, when I was reading them, I didn't know how to read it from, you know, teenage or any kind of woman's perspective, I guess. I don't really know why they like it, but what I thought was weird about it and what the reaction I had with it was when I read it, it seemed like I was convinced that Stephenie was convinced she was Bella, and it wasn't. It was like it was a book that wasn't supposed to be published, and you're like reading her sort of sexual fantasy about some, and especially when she says, "Oh, it was based on a dream," and it's like, "Oh, I had this dream about this really sexy guy," and she just writes this book about it, and like some things about Edward are so specific, and it's like I was just convinced that it's like this woman is mad. She's completely mad, and she's in love with her own fictional creation. And like sometimes you like feel like uncomfortable reading this thing.
After reading the book, I understand why he said it. Now let's talk about Edward. His voice seems to be very attractive, and we really don't see that in the movies. He's a flirt in the books, like he winks at her. I don't recall him doing that in the movies. And he's very immature. But I don't want to talk too much about Edward because we're going to talk a lot about him in the Midnight Sun part. So, changes from the book. A lot of the changes that they made in the movie, for me, made the movie better than the book. That scene in the book is not as dramatic as in the movies.
I know what you are.
Say it out loud.
Vampire.
In the book, he tells Bella that he's a vampire. After they were having lunch at Port Angeles, he takes her home. That ride home, that's where he tells Bella that he's a vampire. And it's not as... the tension is not there. In the movie, it's so much better.
Beautiful. This is the skin of a killer, Bella.
This one really killed me because I was waiting for this scene. I think that's the most iconic and popular scene of the movie, and that wasn't even in the books.
You better hold on tight, spider monkey.
I don't necessarily think it's a good scene, but it's very popular as well in the fandom. That doesn't happen in the book. And also another change that I noticed is that Edward in the movie seems a little bit more emo, a little bit more scary, a little bit more mysterious. And Edward in the book is different. He's not like that. Now, some cringe. We all know that in the fandom, the fact that Bella keeps biting her lip, that's like something that everybody laughs. And I thought that action of Bella biting her lip was a acting choice by Kristen Stewart. No. In the book, she keeps biting her lip. Cringing. Another thing that made me cringe was Edward's bad boy persona, and Edward constantly saying to Bella like, "You're so fragile, I need to protect you." I know this happens in the movie, but in the book it's very emphasized. It's very, very cringy. They say "I love you" way too early. Get to the good stuff. Midnight Sun, which is Edward's point of view. Midnight Sun was obviously written by Stephenie Meyer as well, and it was published on August 4th, 2020. Apparently this book was leaked. That doesn't matter anymore. The book is here. Let's talk about the cover art. The pomegranate. Knowing that Stephenie Meyer likes to make references to other stories, I immediately thought of Hades and Persephone. Stephenie Meyer doesn't mention it once. She mentions it at least 4 times, the Hades and Persephone story, which I don't know, I think over explanation kills art. But so what is the book about? It's just Twilight from Edward's point of view, and this should be more interesting because because, you know, Edward is a vampire. Writing style. Compared to Twilight, this one feels a little bit more detailed and more eloquent. The way that the sentences are constructed feels a little bit more advanced, but nothing too different. We have to talk about the star of the book, which is Eduardo. First things first, he starts talking about him going to high school. And I thought that in this book, we were gonna get a more detailed explanation as in why he's still going to high school, because that was my first question. Like, Edward, listen to me. Why are you still going to high school? But the explanation seems to be the same one, as in the younger you pretend to be, the longer you can stay at that place. But still, that doesn't answer my question. I will have a conversation with my dad and I will tell him, can you just say that I'm homeschooled? And you might say, oh, but if Edward was homeschooled, we wouldn't have the story of Twilight. Okay, then let's do it at the university. Because if I'm an immortal vampire, I will be 100 times more likely to go back to the university and to go back to high school for many reasons. High school, trash. Everyone in high school isn't everyone's business. Also, there's a code of conduct, as in like, you cannot go to the restroom without asking for permission, or you cannot leave the school without giving an excuse. Versus if we are at the university, everybody minds their business. Nobody cares about how you look like. The professors might not even know your name, because for them, you might just be like another student, like another number. There's no code of conduct. So if you're a vampire, you will go more unnoticed. So it seems like a very dumb decision to go back to high school. Also, I don't think people understand how much is 100 years old. So Edward was born in 1901. Since 1901, the Titanic sunk in 1912. Arizona became a state in 1912. World War I started in 1914. 1923, Disney was founded. The FBI was created in 1924. Bubblegum was invented in 1928. The Great Depression started in 1929. Batman's first appearance was in 1939. McDonald's was founded in 1940. The end of World War II was in 1945. Burger King was founded in 1954. Albert Einstein died in 1955. The NASA was formed in 1958. Martin Luther King gave his speech of I Have a Dream. In 1963, Neil Armstrong landed in the moon. In 1969, Microsoft was founded in 1975. Apple was founded in 1976. The first time that we saw the LGBT rainbow flag was in 1978. Game Boy was released by Nintendo in 1989. Pablo Escobar died in 1993. Mrs. Diana died in the car accident in 1997. 9/11 happened in 2001. He has lived 100 plus years and he's like okay with the decision to go into high school. When I was in high school, I didn't want to be there. Imagine being 100-plus-year-old vampire and going to high school because your adopted dad wants to play house with you and your fake siblings. Hello? They do this back to back to back. I don't buy it that any of them will be okay with that decision at all. But then, when I continued reading the book, it made more sense why Edward was still going back to high school. And the answer seemed to be that he's immature as fuck. I said it in the Twilight book, like, oh, I noticed that he seems like a little bit more immature. But in Midnight Sun, oh my god. I don't know why, but the fact that he's so old made me think that the way that he thought and the way that he behaved inside of his head was going to be very wise and very composed and very smart. But no. First of all, Edward is constantly beefing with his classmates, Mike, Tyler, and Eric. Another thing that he does that I found strange is that he keeps following Bella through other people's thoughts because he cannot read her mind. So he goes and finds, like, let's say Jessica is talking to Bella. So he will get inside Jessica's head and see Bella through Jessica. Does that make sense? Edward walked so Joel Goldberg from You could run. Not only he's very immature, but he's dumb as throughout the whole book. He's constantly saying that, oh my god, I can't believe that Bella wants me. Like, that seems impossible that she will want a monster like me, whatever, right? But at the same time, he knows that everything about him invites people in.
Everything about me invites you in.
my voice, my face, even my smell.
So obviously, Edward, Bella is attracted to you. Even if you looked at her weird, even if you don't want to talk to her for a month. Edward, haven't you heard of pretty privilege? People will let shit slide if the person doing said shit is pretty. 100 years on Earth, you cannot figure something as simple as that, Edward. He says that he has 2 medical degrees. Edward, how about next time you go back to the university, you get a psychology degree? Because for somebody that can read thoughts, you know nothing about the human psyche. For someone that has spent 100 years with humans, you know nothing about human behavior.
Jojo! Have you learned nothing?
He notices when Bella's heart rate starts increasing. He notices when Bella starts blushing. And he's still wondering if she's interested in him. Just the fact that he has that power of reading people's minds gives me very Pisces. But then when he starts acting like Joe from You, he was giving me Scorpio. But then he has like very expensive hobbies, like he likes cars. So that was giving me a little bit of Capricorn. But he was really giving Gemini with all the mood swings. Even Bella calls him out. I was so excited to finally see how Edward and Rosalie's relationship was behind closed doors because they have a little bit of tension going on. Right off the bat, we learned that Rosalie, according to Edward, is very shallow and superficial. We also learned that Rosalie apparently was angry with Edward because he never found her attractive. Now, this is something that I found very unlikely. We know, watching the movies, that Rosalie, she was assaulted by her boyfriend at the time and her boyfriend's friends, and then Carlisle found her and turned her and whatever, right? Eventually she gets her revenge on those men. Not only she went through a traumatic experience of being SA, but she went through a life-changing experience, which was she turned into a vampire. You're meaning to tell me that after she went through all of that, she remained to be the same shallow and vain girl that she was when she was a human? So like no character development for her. The math is not mathing. Nothing can convince me that she actually gave a fuck about Edward's perception of her. If anything, she would have been grateful that Edward wasn't interested in her because she just went through a very traumatic experience with men. I would expect her to develop a certain repulsion and maybe indifference towards men. Also, I think she would have been the one to rebel against Carlisle. Also, it made me think that maybe it's the author that doesn't like Rosalie's character too much, and then she kind of like made Edward not like her as well. Moving on to other characters, Angela and Jessica. We get to see how much of a hypocrite and pick-me girl is Jessica, and we get to see how much of an angel is Angela. I really liked what Edward did for her. I thought that was very thoughtful of him. I really liked that. Changes from the movie. We get to see how Edward's minds work, as in when he's reading everybody's minds. We get a glimpse of how difficult it must be to be Alice because she's constantly seeing visions of the future. We get an inside look on the Cullen's family, which I thought was very interesting. We also get to see what happened to James when Bella was with Alice and Jasper. And overall, there's a lot of details. Let's talk about the cringe. I cringe much more in this book than in Twilight. Every time Edward talked in third person and he referred to himself as a monster and whatever, he was having like a crisis, I was cringing. There was a lot of hissing and growling and like people making noises. I was cringing. Also, there's a Fast and Furious scene. Finally, let's say which book was better. So I have to say, I didn't thought it was gonna turn out this way. For me, Twilight, the original one, was better. And let me tell you what. The fact that Edward is acting like an insane person, he's acting like a lunatic throughout the whole book, made me not like the book as much as I like Twilight. And it's not that big of a difference, you know. Midnight Sun has more detail, the development of the stories is better, it's more complex, but Edward being an insane vampire, I was like, no, I don't like him. Tell me if you think it's worth to read the whole series. I still like the movie, I'm still a fan, but the book really took a toll on me, I don't know why. Anyway, I hope you liked this video and thank you for listening. Bye!